The transport plane shuddered violently as it climbed through dense fog over the Pacific. Inside, 28 young men sat strapped into canvas seats, most of them barely out of their teens, all of them wearing the same dull green uniform, all of them trying not to show fear. The engine noise was deafening. No one spoke. Outside the small windows, there was nothing but gray mist and the occasional glimpse of dark water far below. One of the men, tall and lean with a sharp jawline and eyes that seemed older than his face, sat near the back. His name was Clint. He was 21 years old. He had been drafted 6 months earlier. He did not want to be here. The plane lurched again, harder this time, and several men grabbed the edges of their seats. The pilot's voice came through the intercom, calm but clipped, telling them to stay buckled. Clint looked down at his hands. They were steady. He had learned early not to let his body betray what he was thinking. The other men glanced at each other, searching for reassurance, but Clint kept his eyes forward. He had stopped looking for reassurance a long time ago. The fog thickened. The plane dropped suddenly, and a few of the younger men made sounds they immediately tried to swallow. Clint felt his stomach lift into his chest, but he did not move. He had grown up learning to stay still when things went wrong. His father had taught him that, though not with words. You did not panic. You did not ask for help. You waited. You endured. That was what men did. The engine on the left side coughed once, then twice, then died. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. The plane tilted, and the cabin filled with a low animal sound of fear. The pilot's voice came back, sharper now, telling them to brace. Clint tightened his grip on the seat frame. He thought about his mother. He thought about the small town he had left behind, the dry hills and empty streets, the life he had not chosen but had accepted because there was no other choice. He thought about the fact that he had never wanted to fight in a war, that he had been pulled into this like so many others, that none of it had ever made sense to him. The plane hit the water. The impact was not like the movies. It was brutal and immediate. Metal screamed. Bodies slammed forward. Water exploded through the fuselage in a black freezing wall. Clint felt himself thrown sideways, his head cracking against something hard. And then everything became a chaos of cold and noise and darkness. He could not tell which way was up. He could not breathe. His lungs burned. His hands clawed at nothing. The water was so cold it felt like knives. He surfaced gasping, choking, his vision blurred. The plane was sinking fast, already half submerged, the tail tilting upward like a dying animal. Around him, men were screaming, thrashing, going under. The fog was so thick he could barely see them. He kicked hard, trying to stay afloat, his boots dragging him down, his uniform soaked and heavy. He reached for the nearest piece of wreckage, a section of wing or fuselage he could not tell, and clung to it. His fingers were already numb. Another man surfaced beside him, younger, maybe 19, his face white with shock. He was hyperventilating, his eyes wide and unfocused. Clint grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the wreckage. The kid tried to speak but could not form words. Clint did not say anything. He just held on. Around them, the ocean was swallowing the plane piece by piece. The screaming grew quieter. Some men had found debris to hold. Others had not. The minutes became hours. The cold was unbearable. It crept into Clint's bones, slowing his thoughts, turning his limbs into dead weight. He knew what hypothermia was. He had read about it once. He knew that at some point, his body would simply stop working, that he would let go without meaning to, that he would sink without even realizing it. The thought did not frighten him as much as it should have. There was something almost peaceful about it. He had spent so much of his life fighting against things he could not control. Maybe this was just another one. The young man beside him was shivering violently, his teeth chattering so hard Clint could hear them. Clint tightened his grip on the kid's jacket. He did not know why. It would not change anything. But he held on anyway. Somewhere in the distance, a voice called out. Then another. The men were trying to stay together, trying to count who was left. Clint did not call back. He just floated, his body going numb, his mind drifting in and out. He thought about the moment he had received his draft notice. He remembered standing in the kitchen of his mother's house, holding the paper in his hands, reading the words over and over, as if they might change. He had not wanted to go. He had wanted to act, to work in films, to do something with his life that meant something to him. But the country had called, and you did not say no. You went. You did what you were told. That was the deal. But now, floating in the freezing ocean, waiting to die, he felt something shift inside him. It was not anger. It was not even fear anymore. It was clarity. A cold, sharp clarity. He had spent so long doing what other people expected, following the path laid out for him, staying quiet, staying still. And for what? To drown in the Pacific because someone decided he should wear a uniform and carry a rifle? The thought did not make him bitter. It made him calm. A sound broke through the fog. Engines. A boat. The men started shouting, waving their arms, their voices weak and hoarse. Clint did not shout. He just watched as a rescue vessel appeared, its hull cutting through the mist like a ghost. Hands reached down. Voices barked orders. One by one, the survivors were pulled from the water. When they reached Clint, he let go of the wreckage and let them haul him up. He did not have the strength to climb. They laid him on the deck, wrapped him in blankets, and he lay there shivering, staring up at the gray sky, thinking about nothing and everything. Not all of them made it. He learned that later, when they were back on land, when they counted the survivors and realized how many were missing. He learned the names of the men who had drowned, men he had sat beside on the plane, men he had never spoken to. He did not cry. He did not feel relieved. He just felt hollow. They sent him back to base after a week. They gave him a clean uniform and told him to report for duty. No one asked him how he felt. No one seemed to think it mattered. The war was still happening. The machine kept moving. He was expected to move with it. But something had broken inside him. Or maybe something had finally woken up. He started thinking about the choices he had made, or more accurately, the choices he had never made. He thought about the life he had been living, a life of obedience and silence and waiting. He thought about the fact that he had almost died without ever deciding anything for himself. And he realized, with a certainty that felt like ice in his chest, that he could not keep living that way. When his service ended, he left the military and went back to California. He did not talk about the crash. He did not tell the story to impress anyone or to explain himself. He just moved forward. He enrolled in acting classes. He took small roles. He worked construction to pay rent. He did not wait for permission. He did not ask anyone if it was the right thing to do. He just did it. People told him he was too tall, too quiet, too intense. They told him his face was too hard, his voice too soft. They told him he would never make it. He did not argue. He just kept going. He had survived freezing water and a sinking plane. He had held on to wreckage while men drowned around him. He had felt his body shutting down and had chosen to hold on anyway. After that, rejection did not scare him. He started getting roles. Small ones at first, then bigger. He played cowboys, soldiers, drifters, men who did not talk much, men who carried weight. Directors noticed something in him, a stillness, a gravity. He did not perform emotion. He embodied it. Audiences felt it without knowing why. Years passed. He became famous. He became a symbol. But the crash stayed with him, always, a cold thread running through everything he did. It taught him that life was not guaranteed, that time was not infinite, that waiting for the right moment was the same as choosing not to live. He started directing. He told stories about men who were broken, who had to decide whether to keep fighting or let go. He made films about violence and consequence, about the cost of survival. He did not preach. He did not explain. He just showed. And people listened. He grew old. His face became weathered, lined with the years. But his eyes stayed the same. Still, watchful. The eyes of a man who had been under the water and had come back. In interviews, people sometimes asked him about fear. They asked him how he stayed calm under pressure, how he made decisions, how he kept going. He never told them about the plane. He just said that you had to know what mattered, that you had to decide what you were willing to fight for and what you were willing to let go. But late at night, alone, he sometimes thought about the cold. He thought about the young man he had held on to, the one who had survived because Clint had not let go. He thought about the men who had not made it, whose names he still remembered. He thought about the moment he had stopped waiting for permission to live, and he understood, in a way he could never put into words, that the crash had not taken his life. It had given it back.